Well, there are various modes of exchange rate arrangements throughout the region. In some countries, there are fixed exchange rates. In other countries, more flexible exchange rates. In the countries with fixed exchange rates, of course, the rate is set automatically and doesn't change. Instead, you have to adjust other policies to support that rate. In countries with flexible exchange rates, you allow the exchange rates to absorb changes in the economy. I think by and large, the way exchange rates have been managed in the region has improved over time. But there are, of course, countries where there are some challenges. For example, reflecting difficult economic circumstances, exchange rates have been depreciating in some parts of the country, the likes of Zimbabwe, for example, in recent years. So there are challenges. But by and large, relative to how historically things have been, the management of exchange rates has improved. The choice of exchange rate regime is the subject, is up to governments in each country, each IMF member country, and also each country in the world. So the question is, how do you make sure, once you've chosen a regime, how do you make sure that you have policies that are consistent with that regime? I think that's really the key thing. So, as I noted earlier, in some countries they find flexible exchange rates work for them. In other countries, fixed exchange rates. But the key really is the consistency of policies around the exchange rate regime. I think that's really what needs to be addressed. So, Cameroon is, as part of the CEMAC region, which has a number of countries which are extremely dependent on natural resource and particularly oil exports, has faced the brunt of the decline in commodity prices over the last several years. So the region as a whole has had to contend with lower commodity prices and had to adjust the economic conditions to be consistent with lower prices. So that has required a number of reforms to be initiated, difficult fiscal adjustment to be undertaken. The government has required to look for ways to reduce spending. So we've seen the implementation of that program. Overall in CEMAC, what we've seen is the region was precipitously losing foreign exchange reserves quite precipitously. That decline has stopped, and there's even been some increase in the level of reserves. So on the macroeconomic side, the adjustment is beginning to bear fruit. I think the next step really is to begin addressing the growth agenda. We see that being, the area where policy attention requires. Specifically on Cameroon, what we've seen growth has been around the 4% mark or so in the last couple of years. We see tremendous potential in the economy. But that also requires really doing quite a lot of reforms, particularly reforms that will foster competition in various sectors. And the important thing about doing reforms that will foster competition between companies, between enterprises, is that not only will it support higher productivity and higher growth, which of course is important for job creation, but it will also be really welfare improving. So the more competition you have, the lower prices people will have to pay for goods and services. So it will actually help put money in people's pockets. So I think in Cameroon, building on what has been achieved so far and taking that to the next stage by doing reforms to accelerate competition is what's needed. First of all, if 3-4 years, 2-3 years ago, even a year and a half ago, if I had said to you that there would be a continent-wide free trade area, you would have raised an eyebrow, and most people were very skeptical that it could be achieved. It has been achieved, and I think it really is something which all Africans need to be proud of. The region has come together and laid out, a very important, benchmark for much the rest of the world to try and emulate. But, so far it's just intentions that have been put on the ground. We have to go the full step forward, remove tariff barriers, And in addition, of course, also address non-tariff barriers, and the infrastructure deficit that in terms of linking our countries. Subject to those things being achieved, I think it will be a very, very important driver of growth in the coming years.